I'm excited to invite you into my kitchen today where we're working on a project of canning peaches. Now, if you're not familiar with how to do any kind of canning project, don't be scared. It's not nearly as complicated as you might have heard. And today we're starting with one of the most easy and basic recipes for canning, and that is just a basic water bath canning of peaches, fresh peaches from the farmer's market. So stay tuned as we take you step by step through the process of how to can peaches. You'll already hear my pots boiling. I've got all kinds of things going here on the stove to prepare us for the project that we've got of canning peaches. But before we get into the actual project, I wanted to just walk you through a few of the key ingredients that you're going to need to do water bath canning at all. The first thing is this big old giant water bath canning pot. And this is an enamelware, so it's a steel pot with a light enamel. It's already full of water that's warming up, getting ready for the canning. But it comes as a kit generally. You can get it from between $30 to $50 wherever you live. And step over here, I want you to see the ingredients that are going to come in that. It'll generally come with some sort of a skinny spatula like this so that we can get down in there and get the bubbles out of the deep jars as we're making it. And then also it has this little kind of a measuring stick so we can see exactly how deep the water is if you need to measure the water in your pot. That's just one of the things. Also, this thing is very handy. This is just a way to clomp onto the top of the jar. You'll see it here later without getting yourself having to touch it and get hot. It's got these nice little rubber handles that make it easy to grab a hold of the jar and pull on or off the lid if you need to, all without getting yourself too hot. It comes with all of this, thankfully. This is indispensable, so if you try to can with anything else, at least get this. You can buy these by themselves, but they also come in the kit. And these are so invaluable. You'll see us as we are able to pick the hot jars up out of the canner and pull them up without having to get our hands all boiled and hot. I will warn you, this project, you probably will at least get one small cut on your finger and at least one burn, but it's all worth it. Fresh peaches canned are worth every bit of the angst that you might have to go through. Now this little thing is wonderful. It's not a requirement for good canning, but this is a little magnet tipped stick. And literally when we step over and need to pull these out of the hot water, look at how wonderful that is. It just pulls them right out for us because they're metal, and it keeps us from having to touch them because of the bacteria that could be on our hands if we are not with fresh washed hands. So they're in some very hot water right now, and this just saves us from having to touch them. All right, couple of other things here. This is going to make it easy for us to pack. It's kind of like a funnel, but just the perfect size for your canning jars. You're going to want one of these. This doesn't come in the actual kit, but a ladle is going to help you a whole lot no matter what you're canning. So get yourself a good ladle. And then this is the basket that actually puts the cans, the jars down into the canner. It's made beautifully with these little handles that can lower it all the way down in, or actually set itself on the edge of the canner. It's absolutely vital that the jars never touch the bottom of the canning pot, and so this keeps them off of the bottom successfully, just the way we need them to be. All right? So we've just finished sterilizing the jars, all of them in the dishwasher on high, on the hottest setting that it will make. So by doing that, it kind of sterilizes all of them and prepares them with no bacteria in them, Lord willing, ready for the project ahead. It's absolutely imperative that you're trying to think of how to keep everything clean around you. I'm using some very old jars. These could be as much as 100 years old, and one of the tests that I need to do before I use them in a canning project is to take my finger and just run it around the rim, because many times used glass jars have little tiny chips that are going to compromise the seal that we need to get for a good canning project. All right, so you literally, even new jars, if you get new jars, but a lot of mine are old, I'm going to take, and you'll want to do the same thing. Run your finger around the outside and just make sure there are no chips or any kind of crack that you might notice that could compromise the seal or make this jar break in the process. All right, then nextly, you're going to want to go out and make sure you've got fresh rings that are not rusty like many of mine are from many years ago, and also fresh lids. This is the little lid, and let me just show you an example of this. Hold on. I've got some old lids here that have been used in canning projects before, and if you look close, there's a little tiny dimple in the front of that. You may not be able to see it on camera, and it's truly okay if you can't, but my point is that even the ones that have been used that you don't see a dimple like this have often just been barely compromised over the years of use. And so you never want to reuse the same old lid like this that you're seeing. You always want to buy new ones every single time. This is another example of one that has rusted from too much time that has passed. Probably did a great job on one jar that lasted for many, many years. You just go out and get new ones, and they don't have to be a name brand, but this is a fresh one where there's no dimples, and when I look at it, I can check and see, yes, the ring is fully nice rubber all the way around the outside. It's going to get a nice good seal, and this is the kind that you want. All right, so you're going to go out. It's a very minimal investment to get fresh rings and fresh lids if you need them. The lids especially are non-negotiable. All right, so now that we've talked through all of the details that go into this, let's go ahead and get started on the actual project of canning the peaches. In just a moment, we'll be preparing the peaches. We'll need to get the peelings taken off of them and cut them up ready to be packed. But while that's all happening, we need for the syrup that's going to go in with them to be heating up, preparing itself too, since all this kind of needs to be hot all at the same time. So pretty simple. I just take a nice saucepan and I'm going to pour in 6 cups of water. That's where I usually start for this bushel of peaches. Just so you know, I've got 45 peaches. I bought them at the farmer's market. If it's interesting to you, I bought them for $35 for 45 peaches. That comes out at close to 80 cents a peach. That's a little expensive. You probably can get them cheaper somewhere else, but they are fresh, they're organic, they're local, and they're right at the peak of their season, so they're perfect. And they came with a pretty basket from the farmer's market. So that's what we'll be using today. And so for that amount of peaches, 45 peaches, we're going to just start with what we think is a rough estimate of how much of this light syrup we want to make. So I've taken 6 cups of water. I'm going to put that on high for now so it gets started warming up. I'm going to put in there 1 cup full of unbleached sugar, and then I'm going to put in half a cup of raw honey. Now, we call it raw honey, and we're excited about it because it has all of its nutritional content because it's raw, but obviously we're cooking it now, and so it will lose some of that nutritional content, but it's going to make a wonderful flavor for the peaches, and in my opinion makes the best kind of syrup for the peaches. So we're going to get this to dissolve all together, and it'll just be warming up and getting ready for us to pour in the top of the raw pack peaches that we do. We don't even cook them at all. We'll heat them up just enough to get their skins to fall off, but other than that, they will be cut up raw and put into the jars, and then we just pour this light syrup over them. So check back with me here in just a minute and we'll get started on the process of getting the peaches all ready to go after I stir this and get this all incorporated and nicely dissolved together. All right? Right now I'm about halfway through the basket of peaches. I've been working just for a few minutes on it, and I just wanted to talk you through what the process is. So these peaches I don't even wash unless they're covered in bird poop or some sort of random atrociousness, but normally they should be just about fine, even if they're a little bit dirty. But what I'm going to do is take them right out of the basket and dunk them in for about 30 seconds to a minute into a pot of hot boiling water or almost boiling water. Really, in my estimation, the closer it can be to boiling, the better, but some folks say just hot water works. So you do whatever it works for you, but I'm gonna put them in there for about a minute, and then I'll ladle them out and carry them right over here to the sink where I have prepared a bowl full of ice water with ice cubes in it, just so that their skins kind of loosen up, and I literally can take my thumbs and just press into them gently, and the skin just peels right off. I shouldn't even need to use a knife at all. There will be a random few that I might need to use a knife on to get the skins off, but most of them are going to just peel off nicely with my hands, and then I'll set them in a large bowl over here to the side where they'll wait their next turn as we slice them up and core them and put them into their jars, which is a very quick process. So let's get started finishing the rest of these basket, and I'll meet you back here in a minute as we prepare to put them into the jars. The next step of this process is just to cut them in half. There, it pops right open. Beautiful. You want the inside to be nice and red like that. If it's not, it's probably not ripe. But these are just, most of them, at the perfect stage of ripeness. There they go. Also, a lot of folks can their peaches just cut in half, so you don't have to even cut them up even further than just in half if you like. It's all on your personal preference. And these are going to be ready for canning. Again, this is the raw pack method, so these will be ready to can here in just a minute, as soon as we get some more cut up. I've got the hot jars fresh out of the dishwasher, so they are nice and warm, and they're ready to receive their peaches. So I've got my little funnel here, just put in the first jar after I've checked at the top rims of each to make sure that they're free of all kinds of cracks. And now I'm just going to fill these up as quick as can be, and I want to fill them up almost to the shoulders of the jar. You'll see it won't be all the way to the rim, but it'll be almost to the shoulders of the jars. Some people, just so you know, like to cut their peaches up in just in half, and to get more space in that jar, you can layer them face down if you go with whole halved peaches. If you do that, you'll fit a little bit more into the jar, and there will be less room for that light syrup that you're going to pour into the very top. So let me fill these on up, and then it'll be time to fill them the rest of the way with that light syrup that's on the stove right behind me. We're almost to the last step of this process. I've got them all filled with peaches, and even though I know my mother would probably disapprove and tell me I should have taken my time and gone slower so that each peach would be beautiful when it comes out, I probably will regret that, but I know they're going to be scrumptious. So I'll just continue with the process here. The last bit that we need is to fill them up with that light syrup that we've had back here on the stove while we were doing the rest of the process. We'll fill them up to about the shoulders of the jar with that, and then we're going to put on the lids that we've had over here in hot water, remember, with our little magnet stick, and then screw on the lids finger tight. That means as tight as your fingers can screw them on without hurting yourself or anything like that, just kind of nice and tight. And we'll lower them down into our canner that's already halfway full of very hot water, but not quite boiling yet. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna just ladle that wonderful syrup that's made with raw honey and sugar into each of these. And once we get it pretty close to being full, we'll take our little spatula and reach down in there and make sure there are no air bubbles or pockets that are hindering anything. We want every bit of it to have liquid. This is a pretty simple process if you can just keep all of the parts of it sterile and hot at the same time. We're just reaching down into each little part of this, kind of down toward the bottom, to make sure all the air bubbles come up to the top. Just helps them Make sure everything's correct and has a better seal in the end too. It's amazing how many little air bubbles get trapped down in there. I want to get a good, nice seal around the top there. And I'm going to quickly put the lids on. So put that on tight. All right, we're ready to put them in the canner. All right, I've moved the canner to the front burner here and everything is ready for me to go ahead and put them into the water. It's been heating for a while now, so it's almost boiling, but not quite. And so you'll want to be careful not to burn yourself. And I'm just going to lift these up carefully. It's pretty heavy. And lower them down carefully into that almost boiling water. I'm putting them in just a little slowly because I don't want any of them to get hurt. I want to make sure all of them are fully covered. You can see I've got about an inch of water over the top of them. And what I'm going to do next is bring this to a boil. I'll put the lid on it, and once it starts boiling, that's when the clock starts. And we'll want it to go for 30 minutes at that point. So I'll check it periodically, and if that water starts evaporating like it does when it boils, I have a teapot already filled with boiling water right next to it, and I'll fill it up, and so that it always has at least an inch of water over the top of those, each of those jars. So after a half an hour, we're going to carefully lift it out. We're going to dry each of them off, and we're just going to set them on the counter, probably overnight, till they just acclimate. And we'll check each of their seals to make sure that their belly button is kind of sucked in, which means they've done perfectly. And I'm expecting a good batch. They might not be beautiful, but like I said, they will be scrumptious. So thanks for watching, and I'll show you the finished product as soon as we get done. This project has not only been so much fun, but it's also turned out absolutely perfect, and that kind of surprised me, to be honest with you. We've processed these large jars for 30 minutes, and once they reached the rolling boil. We don't start the timer again until they've reached that rolling boil stage. Then we make sure that they had water covering over the lids. And anytime that the water started to go down just a little bit, I'd add a little bit more just to make sure that there was no chance that the lids were exposed out of that water. So they processed for 30 minutes in that, and then we quickly, as soon as that timer goes off, just lift them right out of the canner as we lift each jar out and put it on a nice, either a cookie sheet or a cooling rack or just a nice towel like I've got here. They're going to sit here until they reach room temperature, and in that time, it's so much fun to go about your rest of your projects that you might have going on, like cleaning up the kitchen, and you'll hear over the next hour these wonderful little pop, pop, pop sounds as one by one, each of them make sure that they have their little dimpled top all sucked in, just perfectly sealed, and you know that it's been successful. So ultimately, we came out with 7 large jars full of wonderful canned peaches in a light syrup. And I'll make sure I've put the recipe down below for you to be able to replicate it if you'd like. And then I had a lot of peaches left over, so what I went on and did was made peach preserves. So I came up with 3 wonderful little pints of peach preserves as a special afterthought that I can't wait to try. I taste tested them once and my mouth waters just thinking about it because they were phenomenally delicious. So here is your assignment. Get yourself down to your closest local farmer's market, or if you don't have one in your area, get down to a fruit stand. Better yet, I wish that I had my own orchard. If you've got your own orchard, just go pick some of your fresh fruit out right in the peak of season and bring it home. And if by chance you haven't tried to do a canning project before, I would recommend calling a friend who's good at it or who has done it before. Perhaps you have a mother or a grandmother who's done this a million times, and they'll walk you through it like it's just second nature to them. That's your assignment for this week. You will absolutely love the outcome. You're gonna have some laughs. You're gonna do a little bit of sweating over some hot boiling water. But once you get this finished product, I can't even tell you how rewarding this is and how much fun it's gonna be to eat over the cold winter months when I'm craving some sort of summer taste in my mouth. This is gonna be what I reach for. Until we see you on the next video, would you share this with someone who needs to see it or be encouraged by it or inspired to do a canning project with you? We would love for you to comment below with what your favorite things are to can or special recipes that you might recommend that we try. There's so much we can learn from each other. But until we see you again, may God bless you as we learn from the past to prepare for the future. Hey there, just before you go, let me share a quick scripture with you. This is actually out of Proverbs chapter 23, verses 22 through 25. Listen close. It says, "Listen to your father who gave you life, and don't despise your mother when she's old. Buy truth and don't sell it. Buy wisdom and instruction and understanding. The father of the righteous will greatly rejoice, and he who fathers a wise son will be glad in that son. So let your father and mother be glad. Let her who bore you rejoice." Now go spread the word.